Hey.
Hi.
Hey. So, hi. Hey. How you doing? I think before I start, I just want to say a huge thanks to the organizers of this thing for letting me be a part of it, for making sure that none of us fall into any holes. Annie and Soren and Iveta and Skirmant, and I know I'm forgetting so many of you guys, but thank you so much. You guys do a first-rate thing up here. Right, Yosef? Yes, all right. So I was going to read from my new book, but I'm already bored of reading from that book, so I'm going to just read a story. It's called Two Roosters in 50 Years. The rooster of my youth was Generalissimo Arujo Cougar Alligator Falcon Antonio, but no one besides me could ever remember it, and so he was just General Falcon. I spent all my time with him. When he was a striped, fluffy chick, we sat in the tall grass together. His droppings perpetually dotted my lap, and I squeezed him too hard while he pecked at spit-like wads of tree frog eggs. I defended him from the bullying hens. Over time, his comb bloomed, his spurs sprouted into pointed knobs, half flesh and half bone, and his demeanor shifted. One day, upon entering the coop, I saluted him and said, as I always said, "Reporting for duty, General Falcon, sir." He scraped his foot in the sand and lowered his head. He balked in a low, throaty way, his eyes fixed on me. He heaved and wagged. I distributed the feed among the troughs, one eye on the ground so as not to step in the ubiquitous chicken shit, the other eye on General Falcon. There's a kind of current that flashes through a body, human or foul, in the moment before it strikes. The mind plans the action instantaneously before the body executes it. I registered the current preempting General Falcon's lunge, and on reflex, I kicked him. My instinct was to pick him up, brush him off, set things right, but I ran. I fled through the coop door. I tore down the hill, glancing back over my shoulder. And it was a good thing that I hadn't gone with my instinct. General Falcon was right on my ass. His open beak emitted a terrible sound. For the first time in my life, I knew sheer terror. He'd been my greatest friend up to that point, and in the midst of this terror and betrayal, and even though he was pursuing me at that very moment, leaping feet first, his spurs grazing my back, that terrible, terrible sound, guilt flooded my chest. The general lunged again and finally landed it, his spurs gouging my shoulder blades and his beak digging into my neck. I flailed my arms and spun, and he fell. I reached the door of our house, our family's little chicken coop, and slammed it behind me. General Falcon battled the door for some time, and then everything went silent. My mother discovered me sitting with my bloody back against the door, and she took me to the bathroom, where she picked General Falcon's downy feathers from my hair and dabbed my wounds with hydrogen peroxide. My father proposed that we have him for Thanksgiving, but I would hear nothing of it. Maybe General Falcon was just in a mood that day. Maybe I had provoked him. Maybe it was me. Maybe this was a phase. Maybe he would change. I fashioned a shield of sorts from an empty 80-pound FRM feed bag, and I armed myself with a yellow wiffle ball bat. "Reporting for duty, General Falcon, sir," I said. He attacked the FRM bag. I smacked the wiffle ball bat against the bag to frighten him. But whether I provoked General Falcon, or whether I'd done something to him or not, this was not a mood or a phase. It was not me. He would not change. This was him. My father arranged for the lady at the end of the road to do the deed, and on Christmas Eve I went out armed with my feed bag shield and my yellow wiffle sword, and General Falcon was gone. He appeared on a platter at dinner. No one acknowledged anything, but all of us knew. The affair was solemn, and little, if any, pleasure was derived from it. What I mean to say is that when we ate Generalissimo, Arujo, Cougar, Alligator, Falcon, Antonio for Christmas dinner, he was a gray and stringy corpse, as tough and dry as nails. Several lives gone by, it was a half-century before I gathered the muster to take another rooster. I refrained from giving this one a proper Christian name, and even now I think of him, and I think of him often, as the rooster of my later years. At first I maintained some distance, but memories of the warmth of my youth with the pre-transformation General Falcon rushed back to me every time I saw him, and soon I spent all my time with the rooster of my later years, petting him, nuzzling him, kissing him, yes, nuzzling and kissing him. I still bought the 80-pound bags of FRM corn feed. I fed him the FRM corn directly from my hand. He lived with some boring hens in the coop out back under a massive cherry tree, and for one whole season, he evinced no interest whatsoever in the fruit. The cherries fell, they rotted and fermented all across the yard and in the dirt of the coop. Who knows what drove him one day to eat his first cherry? It has occurred to me that he maybe recognized the scent of alcohol from my breath, a fruit-forward wine perhaps, in a cherry fermenting among tall blades of grass. However it happened, it happened. Early in the next season, as soon as the fruit began to drop, I noticed him stumbling goofily around in the yard. The loose gait, so alarming in a wasted human being, is charming and delightful to behold in a chicken. He keeled adorably left and right, and his neck lopped forward and back. I ate dinner on the patio and watched him, and I have to admit, for some time his antics amused me a great deal. He bowed up at a stoic squirrel. He attempted to mount a vaguely hen-shaped rock. He rolled an egg into the yard with his head. I should have anticipated the consequences sooner. How much could he drink when each fermented cherry was larger than his brain? The equivalent of who knows how many shots of hard liquor for a human. Before long, he stumbled into a rose bush and put out his eye. He ran full tilt into the brick sidewalls of the house, knocking himself unconscious. He wandered into the road, mistaking, I can only assume, the thin strip of median for our wide yard. I attempted an intervention, moving him into a separate enclosure on the edge of our property, far away from the cherry tree. But the DTs came on quick. By nightfall, he'd already pecked off 2 of his toes. So I let him loose again, and he bolted back to the tree, scarfing cherries as he went. He chased me now and then, but these flimsy attacks required neither an FRM bag nor a wiffle ball bat. There was no flash that went through his body. He keeled angrily toward me, and I needed only step aside. One thing he did well was lean. He was in fact the only bird that I've ever seen lean. He leaned against the side of the coop for hours, clucking that empty eye like a prolonged wink, and if you wedged a cigarette between the remaining toes on his bad foot, you might have mistook him for a chicken James Dean. Gallant, handsome, cool. just like his master. Some nights I came out and leaned against the side of the house, watching him lean against the side of the coop. We leaned and consumed our poisons of choice, and after a while, I joined him in the yard, the two of us swerving and bucking and capsizing together under the moonlight. I woke up under the cherry tree next to him more than a few mornings. We woke and I looked into his bloodshot eyes and felt that I had a true friend, that I had the deepest connection to a rooster that any man short of a pervert could have. Then I retreated inside for another bottle, and he beaked around in the yard for his own fix. One day as I approached the coop, squishing cherries under my feet, I spied him from a distance, and I thought at first that he was having a long drink of water. I saw his cute little tail sticking up, but he didn't right himself as I neared. I noticed the awkward positioning of his body, his feet slightly off the ground, the two remaining toes pointing straight down. In the middle of the previous night, I had considered coming out and joining him for one of our benders. Had I joined him, I wondered, might I have saved my gentle, boozy friend, or might we both have drowned in his water dish? Pointless questions because I asserted my humanity and fell asleep in front of the TV. His body was already stiff and his beak was stained red. I dug a good hole near the trunk of the cherry tree and buried him. Time is sad. Let him fertilize his habit, I figured, for what's left to him of eternity. For what's left me of mine, I sit here on the back patio staring at a bunch of sober fucking hens. Thanks.